I didn't notice the classroom at first. That's the part that bothers me the most. Now how ordinary everything felt when it should have stood out immediately. How the warning signs were there, neatly lined up like chalk on a ledge, and I still walked past them every day without question. If you've ever attended an English school, one of those older ones built in the late 19th or early 20th century, you'll understand what I mean when I say the building itself had a personality. Long corridors, high ceilings, windows that never quite let in enough light, floors that creaked not because they were broken, but because they were old enough to remember things. St. Bartholomew's Grammar sat just outside a small market town, surrounded by iron fencing and leafless trees that rattled whenever the wind changed direction. It wasn't haunted in the way people like to imagine, no stories of screaming ghosts or bloody handprints on walls. It was worse than that. It was quiet. Too quiet, especially after lessons ended. I transferred there midway through year 11, after my father's job moved us north. New school, new uniform, new set of rules I didn't yet understand. I remember standing in the assembly hall on my first morning, blazer stiff and uncomfortable, tie slightly crooked, listening to the headmaster speak about tradition, excellence, and discipline. He never mentioned the past. They never do. St. Bartholomew's followed the same rigid timetable every day. Lessons broken into 50-minute blocks. Bells that rang with mechanical precision. Everything documented, laminated, and pinned to notice boards that hadn't been updated in years. Every classroom had a number. Every teacher had a room. Every student knew exactly where they were supposed to be. At least, that's what I thought. The first week passed without incident. I learned the layout of the building, the way you learn a maze trial and error. Wrong turns, apologetic smiles when I arrived late to lessons because I'd taken the long corridor instead of the short one. Most of my classes were in the newer wing, built sometime in the 1980s, where the walls were brighter and the windows opened properly. It was the old wing that unsettled me. You only went there for specific subjects: history, literature, and detention. The old wing smelled different. Dust, old books, something faintly metallic beneath it all. The walls were darker, the lighting uneven. Some sections felt colder than others, even in spring. On my 6th day at the school, I had English last period, room 214. At least, that's what my timetable said. I followed the usual route, down the main corridor, past the trophy cabinets, up the narrow staircase that always echoed too loudly, and into the old wing. I checked my watch as I walked. 3 minutes to spare. That's when I realized something was wrong. Room 214 didn't exist. I stood in the corridor, staring at the numbers painted above each classroom door. 208, 210, 212, then 216. I checked again, convinced I'd misread. There was no gap where 214 should have been. No bricked-over doorway. No storage cupboard, just a stretch of wall between 212 and 216. The paint slightly darker there, as though it had been repainted more recently. A group of students passed me, laughing, shoving each other the way boys always do at the end of the day. None of them slowed down. None of them seemed to notice the missing room. I stopped one of them, a tall boy with a prefect badge on his blazer. "Sorry," I said, holding up my timetable. "Do you know where room 214 is?" He barely glanced at the paper. "There's number 214, he said, already turning away. "But I've got English there," I replied. He frowned then, just slightly, as if the thought irritated him. "English is in 213 or 216, he said. "Depends on the year." He walked off before I could ask anything else. The bell rang. Panic settled in my chest. That familiar school-age fear of being late, of standing out, of getting into trouble for something that wasn't your fault. I chose the nearest classroom 216 and slipped inside, mumbling an apology as I did. The teacher didn't look up. She continued writing on the board, her chalk moving slowly, deliberately. The lesson to Delancey narratives in Gothic literature was already written out in perfect handwriting. That should have been my first real warning, because that was the exact lesson listed on my timetable for room 20. I took an empty seat near the back and tried to convince myself it was a simple clerical error. Schools made mistakes all the time. Rooms changed. Timetables were misprinted, except something felt off. The room was wrong. Not in a dramatic way. Nothing overtly frightening. Just subtle things that didn't sit right once you noticed them. The windows were taller than usual, but looked out onto nothing but brick wall. The clock above the board ticked too loudly, each second dragging slightly longer than the last, and there were fewer students than there should have been. I counted them twice. 12. Our year had 23 students taking English literature. I leaned toward the girl sitting next to me, someone I recognized from history class. "Where is everyone else?" I whispered. She didn't answer. She didn't even turn her head. When the teacher finally faced us, I felt my stomach tighten. She was older than I'd expected. Not elderly, but not young either. Gray threaded through her dark hair, pulled back tightly. Her eyes scanned the room slowly, stopping on each student for just a second longer than comfortable. When her gaze reached me, it lingered. "You're new," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, miss," I replied. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Then you should pay close attention," she said. "Some lessons are only taught once." The door behind me clicked shut. I didn't remember it being closed before. No one else seemed to notice. The bell didn't ring to signal the end of the day. The clock on the wall stopped at 3:32 p.m. And that was when I realized, dread creeping in like cold water around my ankles, that I couldn't remember how I entered the room at all. The first thing the teacher did after the door closed was take the register. She didn't announce it. She didn't reach for a clipboard or glance at a tablet the way most teachers did. Instead, she folded her hands neatly in front of her and began to recite names from memory. Each name landed in the room like a soft knock. "Alistair Moore here," someone answered. "Priya Desai." "Here." The responses came automatically, almost rehearsed. No one looked up. No one shifted in their seat. It was as if the act of speaking was all they were allowed to do. Then she said a name I didn't recognize. Thomas Reed. Silence. The teacher didn't react. She waited 5 seconds. 10. The clock remained frozen at 3:32. Finally, she made a small mark beside the name in the register I still couldn't see. "Absent," she said calmly. A shiver passed through the room. I looked around, expecting someone to laugh or whisper or at least exchange glances. No one did. The girl beside me stared straight ahead, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The teacher continued. When she finished, she clasped her hands again and smiled. "Good," she said. "We can begin." She turned to the board and started the lesson as though nothing had happened, as though the name she'd called Heidanti changed the air in the room. I tried to focus. I really did. She spoke about Gothic literature, about the unseen spaces in old houses, about rooms that existed only at certain times of day, about how fear wasn't created by monsters, but by absence. Her voice was calm, almost soothing, but my attention kept drifting to the students around me. 12 of us. Always 12. No one took notes. No one raised a hand when the teacher asked a question. She didn't wait for volunteers. She called on people directly, and they answered without hesitation, as if they'd been practicing the responses for years. At one point, she looked directly at me. "Why do authors return to confined spaces?" she asked. I swallowed. To create tension, I said. She nodded. "And why else?" I hesitated, then said the first thing that came to mind. "Because they trap the characters." Her smile widened. "Exactly," she said. "And trapped characters behave differently, don't they?" Her eyes held mine for a moment longer than necessary. When I looked away, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The door. There was no handle on the inside, just smooth, varnished wood. I raised my hand slowly, my heart pounding in my ears. "Yes?" the teacher said, without turning around. "Miss," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What room is this?" She paused, chalk hovering mid. Then she wrote one final letter and placed the chalk down carefully. "This is English," she said. "I meant the room number," I clarified. She turned to face me again. "For most students," she said, "that information isn't necessary." A few of the other students shifted in their seats. The first movement I'd seen from them all lesson. "I need to get to my bus," I said. "It leaves at 4. The teacher's expression softened. "Oh," she said gently, "you won't be leaving early?" A boy, 2 rows ahead of me, laughed under his breath. It wasn't a normal laugh. It was strained, forced, almost apologetic. "Miss?" the boy said suddenly, his voice tight. "It's past dismissal." The teacher tilted her head. "Is it?" she asked. He glanced at the clock, then froze. It's still 3:32, he said. "Correct," she replied. "And until that changes, this lesson isn't over." The boy pushed his chair back. "I need to go," he said. Louder now. "My mom's waiting." The teacher didn't move. "Sit down," she said. He did done. He took 3 steps toward the door before something else happened, something I still can't explain properly. The lights flickered. Just once, in that brief moment of darkness, I heard something shift behind me, a sound like furniture being dragged across stone. When the lights came back on, the boy was gone. His chair was still there. No one screamed. No one stood up. The teacher sighed, as though irritated by a minor disruption. "Some students," she said, "struggle with structure." My heart hammered so hard I thought I might pass out. I turned to the girl beside me again, this time gripping her sleeve. "Where did he go?" I whispered. Her lips trembled. "He tried to leave last term too," she whispered back. "They always do." "Who?" I asked. She swallowed. "The ones who aren't on the timetable?" Before I could ask what that meant, the teacher clapped her hands once. "Enough distractions," she said. "Open your books to page 47. I didn't have a book. None of us did. But when I looked down, there was one on my desk. Old, heavy, the cover worn smooth. Inside the front page, written in faded ink, was a list of names. I recognized some of them. Students from the room? Others were crossed out. At the very bottom, written more recently, was a name that made my blood run cold. Thomas Reed, and beneath it, in a different handwriting, did not complete the lesson. I didn't turn another page. I couldn't. The book on my desk felt heavier than it should have been, as if it were pressing itself into the wood, insisting on being noticed. The paper smelled old, not just aged, but stale, like it had been sealed away somewhere without air. Around me, the other students had already begun reading. Their eyes moved in unison, left to right, line by line, perfectly in time with the ticking clock that wasn't moving. I raised my head slowly and looked back at the name written at the bottom of the list. Thomas Reed. Miss, I said, my voice barely audible. Who is Thomas Reed? The teacher stopped walking. For a moment, I thought she hadn't heard me. Then she turned, very slowly, and looked directly at the book in front of me. That, she said, depends on when you're asking. A few of the students shifted again, not much, just enough to notice. Like animals reacting to a sound only they could hear. He was a student, she continued. Once? What do you mean? Once? I asked. She smiled faintly. He was assigned to this lesson. The way she said assigned made my stomach twist. But he's not here, I said. No, she agreed. He didn't finish. The girl beside me leaned closer, her voice trembling. He asked too many questions, she whispered, about the room, about the time. I looked at her. What happened to him? Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to the teacher. He stayed, she said. The teacher cleared her throat. That's enough, she said gently. We don't discuss former students during class. Former? My hands were shaking now. I tried to steady them by pressing them flat against the desk. How long is this lesson? I asked. The teacher tilted her head again. Until it's complete. And how do we complete it? She picked up the chalk. You finish the work, she said, or you don't. She turned back to the board and began writing again. This time, it wasn't a lesson title. It was Adeichi, October 14th, 1997. Beneath it, another March 3rd, 2004, then another. November 19th, 2012, the dates filled the board in neat columns. These, she said, are previous sessions. My chest tightened. You mean this class has been running that long? She paused, then corrected me. This room has a boy at the front one I hadn't noticed before raised his hand. Miss, he said quietly, I think I finished last week. The room went still. The teacher studied him for a long moment. Did you? She asked. Yes, he said. I answered everything. I stayed until the bell. Her expression softened. That's good, she said. Then you won't be staying much longer. Hope flared in my chest brief. Fragile. What happens when you finish? I asked. The teacher looked at me. You stop being on the timetable? The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did. You mean we go back? I said. To our normal classes? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the door and placed her hand flat against it. The wood beneath her palm darkened slightly, as though absorbing the touch. This classroom, she said, appears when there's space for it. Space where? I asked. In the day, she replied. In the school. In you. I felt sick. You're saying this room isn't always here? No, she agreed. Only after 3:30 p.m. Only when the other lessons end. And before that? I asked. She smiled again. Before that, this room is something else. The lights flickered longer this time. When they studied, the windows had changed. The brick wall outside was gone. In its place was a corridor. A familiar one. The main hallway near the trophy key. I could see students passing by, laughing, checking their phones, shrugging on coats, normal life moving just a few meters away. Let us out, someone whispered. The teacher shook her head. You can't leave during a session, she said. You never could. I stood up. I wasn't here before, I said. You can't keep me. Her gaze hardened, not angry, but disappointed. You were assigned? she said. That makes you part of the lesson. I didn't choose this, I said. Neither did Thomas, she replied. The clock ticked once. The first movement since I'd entered the room, 3:33 p.m. A low sound filled the classroom, not a bell. Not yet, but something like breath moving through old pipes. The teacher closed her eyes briefly. Oh, she said, someone's finished. The boy at the front, the one who said he'd completed the lesson, begun to fage. Not dramatically. No scream, no flash of light. He simply lost definition, like a reflection disturbed by water. Within seconds, his seat was empty. The clock ticked again, 3:34 p.m. The teacher opened her eyes and smiled at the rest of us. One down, she said. 11 to go. I looked down at the book on my desk. The list of names had changed. One more had been crossed out, and beneath it, written slowly, as if the ink was still drying, was my name. My name stared back at me from the page. Not handwritten, not typed. It looked printed into the paper, like it had always been there, and I was only noticing it now. I shut the book. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Every head in the room turned toward me at once. The teacher sighed. You shouldn't do that, she said. Take my name off, I said, my voice shaking. I don't belong here. She stepped toward my desk. No one ever thinks they do. The girl beside me grabbed my sleeve. Don't argue, she whispered. That's rule 1. I froze. Rule 1, I asked. The teacher stopped walking. Since you've already broken it, she said calmly, we might as well explain the rest. She turned back to the board and erased the dates. In their place, she wrote in large, deliberate letters the rules. The chalk squealed as she underlined it. Rule 1, she said, tapping the board. You do not question why you're here. The chalk moved again. Rule 2, you do not leave before the bell. That includes, she added, windows, doors, and any version of the hallway you think you recognize. The windows flickered faintly, as if of Rule 3, she continued, writing slower this time, you do not interfere with other students' lessons. A boy near the back swallowed hard. What happens if we do? He asked. The teacher turned. You repeat? Repeat what? She smiled. The lesson? A murmur spread through the room. Rule 4, she said. The chalk paused. When she finished writing, the letters looked heavier than the others. Rule 4, if you finish, you go. If you don't, you stay. The room felt smaller suddenly. The air thicker. How do we finish? I asked, unable to stop myself. She looked directly at me. You already started, she said. She snapped her fingers. The books on our desks opened on their own. My breath caught. The pages weren't blank anymore. They were filled with memories. Not mine. At least, not all of them. I saw moments from school, hallways, detentions, locker rooms, classrooms I barely remembered. But woven between them were scenes I shouldn't know. A girl crying in a bathroom stall I'd never entered. A boy hiding under bleachers long after dark. A teacher erasing something from a whiteboard and pretending it never happened. These, the teacher said softly, are the parts that didn't fit. The girl beside me began to cry silently. That's my sister, she whispered, pointing at one of the pages. She transferred. The teacher corrected her. She was reassigned. I flipped further. Each page ended the same way. Decision. A choice Medor avoided. What are we being tested on? I asked. The teacher leaned against the desk at the front. Responsibility, she said. Attention? Honesty. For what? Someone shouted. She looked at the clock. 13:41 policial militar? Because when you ignored it the first time, she said, someone else paid for it. The lights dimmed. The walls shifted, not visibly just enough that my sense of distance warped. Like the room was breathing. You don't punish us for that, I said. We were kids. Yes, she agreed. And children are very good at looking away. A page in my book turned by itself. I saw myself younger, standing at the end of a hallway after school. A door was half open. I remembered that day now. I remembered hearing something inside. I remembered leaving. My stomach dropped. You don't get to rewrite it, the teacher said, but you do get to face it. What happens if we fail? I asked. She pointed to the empty desk at the front. You become part of the room. The walls creaked softly. That's what Thomas did, the girl beside me whispered. He tried to help someone else, instead of finishing his own pages. The teacher nodded. He broke Rule 3. I swallowed. What about the bell? I asked. You said we can't leave before it rings. The teacher's eyes flicked to the clock. Correct. And when does it ring? She smiled. When the room decides you've learned enough? The clock ticked. 3:42 p.m. One of the students screamed. We all turned as the boy in the back began clawing at his book, trying to tear pages out. Stop! He yelled. This isn't fair. The teacher didn't move. The pages wrapped around his hands like wet paper turning to skin. His desk sank slowly into the floor. Within seconds, he was gone. No sound, no trace, just an empty space where he'd been sitting. The clock ticked again. 3:43 p.m. The teacher picked up her chalk. Rule 5, she said, writing carefully. The room is always watching. She turned to us. Continue reading, she said. We're running out of time. I looked back down at my book. The next page was already turning. The pages stopped turning, not because I reached the end, but because something else had changed. The clock, 3:44 p.m. It skipped, not ticked. Skipped like a scratched record jumping ahead. 3:47 p.m. A low hum vibrated through the desks, through the floor, through my teeth. The teacher stiffened. That's unusual, she said. A boy near the windows whispered. Someone broke another rule. The teacher's eyes scanned the room. No, she said slowly. Someone found a loophole. Every student sat up. What loophole? Someone asked. She hesitated. Just long enough. And that was when I saw it. The girl across from me, quiet, pale, hair tied back to tight, had closed her book. Not slammed it. Not torn it. Closed it calmly. She was staring at the door. I finished, she said. The teacher's smile didn't reach her eyes. Did you? She asked. Yes, the girl replied. I didn't change anything. I didn't interfere. I accepted it. That's not all, the teacher said. The girl swallowed. You never said we had to care. The room went silent. The teacher didn't move. You read, the girl continued, voice shaking now. You want us to feel guilty, to take responsibility. But the rules never say that. The clock hummed louder. 3:48 p.m. The teacher turned slowly toward the board. Interesting, she said. The windows rattled. The hallway outside, warped faces blurring as people passed by like smudges of paint. So if I don't care, the girl said, standing now. I still finish. The teacher looked at her for a long time. Then she nodded. Yes, she said. You do. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. The girl took a step toward the door. Nothing stopped her. Another step. Still nothing. Hope flared bright and reckless. She's doing it, someone whispered. The girl reached the handle, turned it. The bell rang. A single, clear note. The clock snapped to 3:50 p.m. The door opened. Light poured in, real light, warm and normal. The girl stepped through and screamed. The door slammed shut on its own. Her scream didn't stop. It changed. It stretched long, thin, echoing like it was coming from a place too big for sound to fill. The windows darkened. The teacher exhaled slowly. Rule 6, she said, picking up the chalk. Her hand shook. You must finish as you are. The room shook. The scream ended abruptly. Silence crashed down harder than the noise ever had. Someone sobbed. I couldn't breathe. What did that mean? I whispered. The teacher didn't look at me. She finished the lesson, she said. But she failed the exit. What happens to her? I asked. The teacher finally met my eyes. She left, she said, without herself. The board behind her began to bleed chalk dust down the wall like ash. The clock ticked again. 3:51 p.m. The books changed. The pages were blank now, except for one line at the bottom of each. What will you take with you? The girl beside me grabbed my hand. I don't want to forget, she whispered. I don't want to disappear. I thought of the hallway, the door. The day I walked away, the teacher spoke softly now. You can finish, she said. You can leave. But, I asked. She gestured to the words on the page. You can't take everything with you, she said. The room keeps what taught you. What does it take? I asked. She smiled sadly. Whatever hurts the most. 3:52 p.m. I knew then. This wasn't about punishment. It was about balance. Someone always stayed. Someone always paid. I looked at the empty desks, the missing names. The girl who left screaming, and I understood the final lesson. The classroom doesn't trap students, it trades them. The room was quiet, but the silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, thick, full of waiting. I sat frozen, staring at the words on my desk. What will you take with you? I could feel it, the weight of the classroom pressing down. Not just the teacher, not just the books. The very air was alive, waiting for my answer. I looked around. Empty chairs, blank pages, chalk dust falling like snow. Somehow, the girl who had left still echoed in the corners, like a shadow whispering, "Don't follow me." The teacher cleared her throat. Her eyes were gentle now, but cold. "You will leave," she said. "But you will not leave untouched." I swallowed. What do I give?" She gestured to the pages. Choose wisely. The classroom takes only what matters most. It will keep your regrets, your fears, or your memory of it all. I thought of the first day, of the whispering walls, the desks that moved when no one was watching. I thought of the rules I broke, the lessons I didn't understand until it was too late. And I thought of my friends, the ones I would never see again, the ones who had vanished without a trace. My hand hovered over the page. My heartbeat was loud enough to echo off the walls. Then I felt it. A tug, not from me, but from the room itself. Pulling, insistent, patient. It wanted me to choose. I wrote my answer. My hands trembled as I formed the letters. I take my lessons. I leave my fear. The room shuddered. Books shook. Windows rattled. The chalkboard cracked. A wind rose from nowhere, lifting pages into the air. Words swirled around me, fragments of lessons, fragments of past students. Then silence. Absolute! Perfect. The teacher nodded. It is done. I rose slowly. My legs felt like lead. I walked toward the door. It opened without resistance. Light spilled in, warmer this time, softer than before, but the door didn't just lead outside. It led to a corridor I hadn't seen before. Endless, twisting, lined with mirrors. Each reflection showed a version of me, some confident, some terrified, some not to me at all. Which one will you take with you? The teacher's voice whispered behind me. I paused, looked into the mirrors, saw my fears staring back, saw the girl who left screaming, trapped forever in one of the reflections. I stepped forward. I chose myself. The mirrors rippled. The corridor dissolved. I stumbled into sunlight. The real world, or what I remembered as real, the school stood empty. Silent, the doors locked behind me without a sound. I was free, but not untouched. I felt a hollow in my chest where something had been: fear, regret, memory of the classroom. Something I couldn't name, but knew I had left behind, and as I turned back, the school looked ordinary. Nothing out of place. No whispering walls. No empty desks. Just brick and glass. Yet I knew the truth. Somewhere, inside, the classroom still waited. Patient, hungry, teaching, trading. And one day, it would call again. Weeks had passed since I escaped the school. Life outside seemed normal. Classrooms, friends, homework, mundane, ordinary, safe, or so I thought. It started small. A faint scratching behind the walls of my bedroom. A whisper when I passed the empty corridor of the office. I told myself it was imagination, nerves, stress. But then came the bell. Not the bell of any school I knew. Low, hollow, and impossible to ignore. It vibrated through the floor, through my bones, through my thoughts. I froze. My pulse raced. The sound wasn't from anywhere. It was from everywhere. The memories hit me like a tidal wave. The endless mirrors. The girl who vanished. The teacher's calm/terrifying eyes. The words on the desk? I had thought I left it all behind, but the classroom never lets go. That night, I dreamed of it again. The door appeared in my room, black as ink, waiting. I tried to resist, but my legs moved before my mind could stop them. I entered. The room was empty, yet full. Shadows stretched across walls I didn't remember. The desks were aligned perfectly. The chalkboard pristine. A single sentence was written. Welcome back. Your lesson continues. I stumbled forward. Fear clawed at me, but I had learned something. Lessons cannot always be avoided, only faced. And then I saw them, the students. Dozens of them. Some I recognized, others I didn't. Their eyes hollow, mouths moving soundlessly, trapped forever in this classroom. Some held books, some pencils, some nothing at all. And in the center, the teacher, smiling.com/terrifying. You returned, she said softly. Some leave forever. So me, both learn. I realized then, the classroom didn't want to hurt me, it wanted me to see, to understand, to remember. She gestured to the empty desks. Choose! I understood immediately. This was the true test, not of fear, but of courage. Compassion, knowledge, memory. I knelt beside the students, spoke to them, whispered their names, remembered their faces, their fears, their hopes, and slowly, as I did, the room began to change. The mirrors cracked, the shadows shrank, the whisper softened, and when I finally stood, the teacher nodded. You have learned the hardest lesson. Some classrooms do not end. Some lessons do not finish. But you have lived. The door appeared again. Light spilling, warm, welcoming. I walked toward it. I didn't look back. When I emerged, it was dawn. The air smelled of rain and grass. The school behind me was empty, silent, ordinary. But I knew better. I would never forget the classroom that waits for the unwary. The lesson wasn't over, it never is. And sometimes, in quiet moments, when no one is looking, I still hear the bell ringing forever.